If you find yourself stuck in bronze, silver, or maybe even gold, then this video is going to be for you. When I first hit gold, I had a win rate that was below 40%, and the reason for this was simple. I just sucked when I started playing competitive. Aside from being just mechanically bad, I also had a lot of misunderstandings about the game. I didn't really know what it meant to be good and what I should be focusing on to improve. And today I'm going to share with you what I learned through my experiences and my failures, and what worked to allow me to stop being bad and quickly climb up in the ranks. The first thing I'm going to want to talk about is the settings. Settings is something that I didn't really think about when I first started playing, and I really wish that I did. The first setting I'm going to want to talk about are the strike indicator and the ability indicators. What these do is show the hitbox of your moves when you press down on the button to use the move. This is really nice for casual players, but if you're watching this video, I assume you don't want to be a casual player. These settings make your moves happen when you depress the button instead of when you press them. All this really does is make your strikes and abilities slower. Any amount of delay added to you using your strikes and abilities is going to be strike battles lost, cores missed, and goals that you should have made not going in. The ability to see the hitbox shouldn't be any sort of boon to you. You should really know your striker that you're playing well enough to have an intimate and instinctual understanding of your hitboxes. If you don't know your hitboxes well enough and would need to see them to know where you're really going to be hitting, then you shouldn't be playing that striker in competitive anyways. The second setting I'm going to want to talk about is the setting that allows you to retry an ability if stunned. What this does is if you are attempting to use an ability and it gets interrupted before you finish casting it, it will immediately use that ability when your stun is ended. Again, this is a great setting for casual players, but this is not good for competitive players. What this setting does is remove your control over the situation when you get stunned. Most likely, if you get stunned in a competitive match when you're trying to use an ability, by the time your stun wears off, whatever you're trying to hit with your ability is no longer there. If you have this setting on, then not only will the stun make you whiff your ability, but now your ability is on cooldown. In the rare situations where you could land an ability after the stun wears off, you can still do it manually. Like I said, you just want more control over the situation and what you can and can't do, so for that reason I recommend you turn this setting off. Now with the settings out of the way, I want to talk about the most universal thing I see. There are people constantly complaining about people leaving their games, being AFKs, or stuff like goalies leaving the goal area or forwards sticking right on top of them and making it harder for them to defend the goal. Now these things do happen, and it sucks when they happen, and it sucks a lot when it happens to you. However, I want to get this out of the way. These things happening do not affect your win rate. Yes, when it happens to you, you have a higher chance of losing. However, when it happens to the enemy team, you have a higher chance of winning. Over time, these things will happen equally to your team and the opposing team. This means that it will have a net neutral effect on your win rate and will not affect your ability to climb. I know a lot of people right now are thinking that it happens to them a lot more than it happens to the enemy team, or even that they never see it happen to the enemy team. This is simply a sort of false bias. Your brain is a lot more likely to remember negative experiences than positive ones, so you're most likely just filtering out the times it happens to the enemy. On top of that, when it does happen to the enemy, it's not as obvious as when it happens to your team. You're typically more focused on your own team than the enemy team, so when it does happen to the enemy, you are most likely to contribute you winning to something more like you were playing better than normal, or that your team just happened to click nicely that game, rather than thinking, oh, this team just had this bad player. So just remember that, sure, it sucks when this happens, but don't let it affect you too negatively. Just try to get past it and go on to the next game and know that it's really not affecting your win rate. Now with that out of the way, the next topic I'm going to want to cover seems like common sense, but I see a lot of people failing in this aspect, so I really want to talk about it. You need to know your striker. Whatever striker you're playing in competitive, you should know inside and out. You need to know your combos, you need to know how you can set up goals with that striker, you need to know the strengths and weaknesses of your striker. You need to know what stats they scale with and how. Like I said, this seems like something that's obvious, but the amount of times I see a Juno on my team not take hot shot when it's available makes me cry inside. Especially when I pass up that awakening to get something else and then they still don't take it. And this is in high gold. When I was playing badly in bronze, I thought I knew what I was supposed to do with my striker, but my win rate said otherwise. Despite this, I thought I was hot shit and that my opinions were simply correct fact. I would get into debates with other people about what strikers were good at what and what awakenings were good, and instead of me doing the math or thinking of it differently because a different opinion was stated, I just assumed that I was right and the other person was an idiot. This was particularly funny to me retrospectively only because a few days later, it would come out that the top players agreed with that other person and they provided evidence to back up their claims. With that said, how do you actually go about learning your striker if you can't completely rely on your personal experience? And this is easier than it seems. Simply seek out information from outside sources. The fact that you're watching this means that you're up to the task to do this. Most of the top players stream daily and even upload guides in the guide section of the official Discord. Now, I'm not saying you should take what they say as holy guidelines or the one true way to play a striker, but I really want you to think about what they say and why they say that. If possible, even engage in discussions about their opinions, either with them or other players. This discussion will build your general understanding of the striker and how you should use them in varying situations. Now, not only should you know your own striker, but you should also know every striker. I'm not saying you should know them to the same degree as your mains, but you should know what their ability to do, what their cooldowns look like, and how they feel. What I'm saying is that you should play every striker at least once, preferably in normals instead of quick play, and I would even say you should play every striker once in a competitive match. Now, I know previously I was saying that you should know your striker in and out before you play them competitively, and that's true after you finish laying down the framework. The problem with normals is that it's people playing on mobile or on consoles with controller or just casuals who aren't good at the game and don't care about being good at the game, and that's fine for them. But outside of just getting to know the very, very basics of a striker, it's not going to do much to help you improve any or really get to know the ins and outs of a striker. Now, when you do this, are you going to lose? Probably. But if you want to climb in ranked, you need to not care about what your rank is. This seems counterintuitive, but trust me, this has been true for every competitive game I've ever competed in. What this is going to do for you is give you the understanding of what's going through the enemy's head when you're playing against them, and it's going to tell you what you can do to make their lives miserable. When you play a character, one of the first things you find out is what it sucks to go against when you're playing that character. And if you do that and you play every character, you're going to have the information for what to do to make their lives hell when you play against them. There's only 15 strikers in the game as of this video coming out, and it does not take a lot of time to really learn all of the strikers. Now, what I'm going to get into is the more gameplay-oriented advice. This advice is going to be general advice, and it's not going to be striker or position specific, as that's going to take way too much time. I will make videos later that go more into detail for the different strikers and roles, but the advice in this video is going to really more apply to everybody. The first thing I want to talk about is how to win strike battles. When you and the opponent are right next to each other and the core is in between you, what do you do? Of course, you're going to want to hit the core, but the important question is when. And the answer is simply last. You don't want to be the first person to hit the core, because what's going to happen when you hit the core first is that the enemy is going to hit the core after you hit it, and then you can't hit it again because your strike's on cooldown. All you're going to be able to do in that situation is helplessly watch as the core flies away from you and usually into your own goal. So simply hit the core last. Naturally, this gets a lot more nuanced and complicated in various situations, such as when one or more of the involved persons have abilities that are off cooldown, or when the core is very close to a barrier or a goal. And then it gets even more complicated when there's more than 2 people near the core. These are things that you're going to have to figure out how to deal with as you play, but you want to keep the main principle in mind that you want to be the last person to hit the core. If you find that you're waiting to hit the core and then the enemy hits it and you can't react fast enough to hit the core after they hit it, there's really only 2 things you can do. Try to learn how to predict when the enemy's going to hit the core, or just work on your reaction time. The reaction time isn't really something that can be trained, so if you keep trying and practicing and you're not able to get it after X amount of time, then you're probably going to have to go in the prior camp where you're just going to have to learn the ability to feel when the opponent is going to hit the core and preemptively react to it. And again, this is something you're just going to have to practice and get more experience with, but you just want to keep in mind that you don't want to be the first person hitting the core. The next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be angles. If you've ever watched really good people play pool, you'll know that what sets them apart from you, other than the fact that they can hit the cue ball without missing somehow, is that they know all the angles and how to move the ball to get it where they want to get it. They can bounce the ball off the railings or other balls and place that cue ball exactly where they want it to go. Now, you need to do that in Omega Strikers. If you just keep hitting the core straight towards the goal, it's going to get intercepted by the enemy 99% of the time. What you need to do is utilize angles and the terrain of the map to get around enemies. This includes things like the walls, which all maps have angled portions of the walls that assist with this. And there's things like the black hole in Atlas's lab or the well in the middle of Ai.Mi's app, etc. There are so many tools for you to get the core around the enemy and into your enemy barrier or goal. Or if you're playing goalie, simply just to clear the goal so they can't score on you. Now, angles aren't the only great way to get the core around the enemy. There's another fantastic tool that I never see people using, passing. I don't see people start passing until around the gold area, and I have no clue why. It's like using angles, but it's easier and more effective. The best part is that until you hit plat, people aren't expecting it to happen. You're going to make some ridiculous easy goals just by passing because the enemy won't expect it and just let the core slide into the goal. When you have the core, here's kind of what you should be thinking about. The first is, can I stuff this into the enemy goal or barrier? If not, is there a teammate that I have a clear line to that I can pass it to? Then if not, do you have a good angle to get the core around the enemy? Typically, one of these three things are going to be true. However, in the rare circumstance that none of these are true, your best bet's just going to be try to win the strike battle. Now, like I said, this is going to be rare, especially in lower elos. So just please pass the core. Now I'm going to be stepping back from the gameplay advice and talk about more mental management. The first thing I'm going to talk about is emotes. Now, don't be toxic. I'm not saying this for any sort of moral reason or telling you to be a good person, but if you're toxic, you're going to lose more games. Not everyone's the same. Not everyone's going to be playing the game for the same reasons. Not everyone can shrug off insults from a teammate. Even if they try, there are plenty of people who are just going to play worse after you spam the free kitty emote when they make a bad play. People are going to mess up, and people are going to have bad games. If you act positively towards these people, there's a chance that they're going to shore up and play well enough for you to squeak out a win. If you're toxic towards them, they are just going to play worse, or maybe even AFK. If this is something you disagree with in any capacity, then just know that that means that you are a bad player. Again, I don't mean this from a moralistic standpoint. I mean that managing mental is an actual skill that determines how well you and your team do in a competitive environment. And if you are actively neglecting this skill, it's the same as you not bothering to learn your combos or what awakenings to take. If this is something that you struggle with, you can simply remove the toxic emotes from your emote bar. You can technically use any emote toxically, but some are harder than others, so I recommend staying away from the ones that are easier to be toxic with. On the flip side of this, you're going to win more games with positive reinforcement. If you use one of the cheer emotes or the heart emotes when a teammate does good, they're statistically going to play better. Now, I'm not telling you to be a good person, but pretending to be a good person when you're playing competitive will increase your win rate. Finally, what I want to talk about is beaten more than any other dead horse I've seen, but I really feel like people just don't understand it. Have fun. Seriously, you need to have fun. If you don't enjoy the process, you aren't going to get better. I'm someone that really throws themselves completely into whatever I'm doing. I'm a musician, an artist, and highly competitive in most aspects of my life, including games, so this is something that I do a lot. And the thing I've noticed is that there are a lot of people who just don't enjoy practicing. And I don't mean playing or doing things, but I mean practicing. When preparing for a Smash Brothers tournament, I would spend hours every day in the training mode just getting my combos down. I'm just playing against myself against a dummy. And most people thought I was crazy doing this for so long, and it sounded like the most boring thing in the world to them. But I loved it. I could see myself slowly improving, and that was a great feeling for me. If you're trying to improve yourself in Omega Strikers and you're not having a good time in doing so, then just don't do it. Or try to change the way you're doing it. It's a game. It's supposed to be fun. The developers want you to have fun. And you want you to have fun. If you're not having fun in doing something, you're not going to improve in that thing. And this is something that took me a lot longer to realize than I would like to admit. There's a lot of things that I, right off the bat, enjoyed the practice of it. But there's also a lot of things that I didn't enjoy and thought I was supposed to still do it even if I didn't enjoy it. When I first started writing, I would constantly beat myself up over what I've written, and I would start to dread the scheduled writing times when they would come up. However, after I stepped away for a few years and came back to try again, my method of writing was completely different, and I really started to enjoy the process. And guess what? The people reading my work could tell. The output was simply better because I enjoyed doing it. And again, this is something that sounds obvious, but I see so many people just grinding to get better, and what it's doing is it's grinding down their souls and not improving their play in any way. They're just getting upset and thinking that's part of the process. I'm not going to get into the whole societal values and expectations and the grind culture epidemic, but I really do want you to look back on yourself and your time playing the game and see if you really truly enjoy trying to rank up. If you don't, then don't feel the need to play competitive. You don't need to be good at this game, and you don't need to be a high rank. It's just a game. You're fine how you are, and you have plenty of redeeming qualities outside of Omega Strikers. So just have fun. I hope this video helps. These are the things that really helped me to climb and improve. And I really hope that it helps you guys as well, because I see a lot of people struggling in the Discord every day, and my heart feels for them, you know? And so I'm making these things, and I'll make more of these things to try to help you guys get a better understanding and have less frustrating moments. If there's anything in particular you'd really like to see me cover, let me know, and I will probably cover it because I have too much free time on my hands. Now, with that said, have a good day and have some great games.